The silence in space was unlike anything the alien fleets had ever experienced. It was a deep, unsettling stillness that seemed to stretch forever. The vast emptiness of the galaxy, once filled with the sounds of starships and cosmic battles, was now eerily quiet. The last human ship drifted slowly into the dark, fading further and further from the view of the alien vessels. Its engines hummed weakly, barely making a sound in the void. There was no fire, no battle cries, no explosions, just silence. The aliens had watched this moment for days. Every eye in the fleet was focused on the tiny speck of the human ship. To the aliens, the humans were a mystery. Despite all the efforts to destroy them, humanity had proven impossible to wipe out. No one could understand how a species so young, so fragile, could have caused so much trouble. For centuries, the humans fought against overwhelming odds. They had survived in the harshest conditions, constantly outsmarting the more powerful alien fleets that sought to eliminate them. Now, the last human ship was disappearing, and with it, the last of humanity. It was a strange thing to watch, a species that had once been everywhere, now reduced to a single vessel, slowly fading from existence. Some of the alien commanders, having fought humans in countless battles, felt something stir inside them. Was it respect? Or was it pity? They couldn't tell. But one thing was clear: the humans had been a force to be reckoned with. And now, they were gone. Or so it seemed. The final ship was humanity's last hope. It carried the last of their survivors, a small crew of brave men and women who had managed to escape the destruction of their homeworld. The planet Earth had been lost long ago, consumed by a war the humans couldn't win. But they had fought until the very end, never giving up, never surrendering. It was what made them so dangerous. No matter how many times they were pushed to the brink, the humans always found a way to survive. As the ship drifted through space, there was a strange sense of finality in the air. The alien commanders, who had been waiting for this moment, finally felt a sense of closure. The humans were gone. The war was over, but the silence continued to press in. Some of the alien leaders whispered among themselves, uncertain of what to do next. Was this really the end? Or had the humans left something behind, something they had not yet discovered? A strange signal suddenly broke through the silence, coming from the direction of the disappearing ship. It was faint at first, a barely perceptible hum that echoed across the alien fleets. The aliens paused, their sensors picking up the strange transmission. It wasn't a distress signal. There were no cries for help, no frantic messages. Instead, it was something else, something more puzzling. The message was short, cryptic, and encoded in a way no one could understand. It was almost like the humans were leaving a message, but to whom? And why? The alien commanders, who had been so sure that the humans were gone, felt a wave of confusion. Was this a trick? A last-ditch effort to mislead them? Or was it something far more complicated? The signal grew stronger, and the aliens had no choice but to focus on it. They could not ignore it. But what could it mean? As the ship continued its slow journey into the void, the alien fleets kept their distance, wary of the strange transmission. They could not afford to let their guard down. Not now, not when they were so close to finishing what they had started so many years ago. But something inside them told them that the humans were not done yet. They had always been clever, always one step ahead. The idea that the last human ship was vanishing without leaving something behind didn't sit well with the aliens. They had fought too hard to end this without understanding what the humans were trying to say. The fleet's leaders gathered around a large holographic display, watching the signal pulse on their screens. It was faint, but there was no mistaking it. It was a message. They debated what it could mean. Some thought it was a trap, a last-ditch attempt to trick them into following the ship into some deadly ambush. Others suggested it could be a warning, something the humans had left behind in case the aliens ever came too close. But one thing was certain: the last human ship was not disappearing in silence. It was leaving something behind, something that the aliens had yet to understand. And in that moment, as the ship faded into the darkness, the aliens realized they were not the victors they thought they were. The humans had one final card to play. The fleet commanders watched the last ship until it was just a dot in the distance, swallowed by the endless black of space. Yet the signal remained, echoing in the vast emptiness. No one could say what it meant, but one thing was clear. Humanity's story was far from over. The alien fleets moved cautiously as the last human ship drifted into the endless void of space, but their silence was not just born from curiosity. They knew that something about this moment was different. The humans had always been unpredictable, and this disappearance, this final act, did not sit right with them. It wasn't just that humanity had fought to the bitter end, surviving battles that should have destroyed them. No, this was something more. The humans had always left behind traces, small secrets embedded in their final moments. Now, as the ship faded away, the alien leaders felt an unease they couldn't shake off. The ship had carried with it not just survivors, but a legacy of resilience, determination, and an unyielding desire to protect what was left of humanity. For years, the aliens had watched the humans, each encounter leaving them more baffled. How could a species so young, so fragile, have built an empire capable of standing against their superior fleets? Time and again, humanity had proved itself capable of surviving the impossible. The humans were not just survivors, they were fighters. But now, they were gone, or so it seemed. In the midst of this uneasy silence, the alien commanders found themselves lost in thought. Some of them had seen firsthand the desperation in the humans' eyes during the last battle. They had fought with everything they had, knowing it was their final chance. Others remembered the stories of humanity's first encounters, when they were nothing more than a scattered race on a dying planet. They had underestimated the humans back then, thinking they were weak, easy prey. How wrong they had been. Now, as the last human ship floated like a lonely star in the dark, the aliens couldn't help but wonder, had they underestimated them again? The flashbacks to the last war were vivid for some of the commanders. The humans had fought fiercely, not with advanced weapons, but with their willpower and cunning. Their ships, though technologically inferior to the alien fleets, had shown an impressive ability to adapt. They used guerrilla tactics, ambushes, and deceptive maneuvers that made it almost impossible for the aliens to predict their next move. The humans had become experts in survival, constantly learning from their mistakes. They didn't win every battle, but they made sure to leave a mark, a scar on the alien fleets that would never fade. But this final disappearance, the quiet retreat into nothingness, was different. The human ship didn't explode in a blaze of glory. It didn't make a desperate last stand. It simply vanished. The aliens had expected some grand gesture, some final act of defiance. But instead, they were met with an emptiness that felt wrong. For the first time, the aliens began to consider a terrifying possibility. The humans had planned this. Everything, from the last fight to the final ship leaving, had been carefully calculated. They hadn't been running away. They had been leaving something behind. The ship wasn't just an escape vessel. It was a message, a signal, a final piece of their legacy. But what was it? And why now? Why had the humans chosen this moment to disappear? The fleet commanders debated amongst themselves, the room growing tense with the weight of uncertainty. As they examined the data, something unusual caught their attention. The last ship had emitted a faint pulse, a transmission so weak it was nearly undetectable by most standard scanners. It wasn't a distress signal, nor was it a battle cry. It was almost like a whisper in the dark. The aliens couldn't understand it at first, but then something clicked. The signal was a coded message, a pattern hidden beneath the noise. It was clear now. The humans had left behind a legacy. But what was this legacy? It didn't make sense. If the humans were truly gone, why leave something behind? What could they have possibly hidden in the final moments of their existence? Some of the alien commanders felt a cold shiver run down their spines. They had underestimated the humans before, but this was different. The humans had always been a puzzle, and it seemed they were leaving one last riddle to solve. The message, though cryptic, was unmistakable. It was a map, a series of coordinates that pointed to a location deep in the uncharted regions of the galaxy. The message was short, but its implications were enormous. It wasn't a simple map. It was a key to something the humans had kept hidden. Some of the commanders believed it was a weapon, a final defense humanity had designed in secret. Others thought it might be a place, perhaps a colony where humanity had hidden the last of their kind. But there were also those who feared it was something far worse. A trap. A way to draw the aliens in, only to unleash something devastating upon them. The signal continued to pulse, faint but persistent, as the alien fleet turned its attention to the coordinates. They knew they had to investigate, but there was hesitation in their ranks. Could this be humanity's final trick, or was it something more? The more they thought about it, the more they realized how little they truly understood about the humans. They had always fought against the obvious, the direct threats. But the humans were not like other species. They didn't play by the same rules. This final act, this cryptic message, was proof of that. As the aliens prepared to follow the signal, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something much bigger than they could ever imagine. The humans, in their last moments, had left behind a puzzle, one that would take all their cunning to solve. And as the fleet turned toward the unknown, the commanders couldn't help but wonder, was this truly the end of humanity, or was this just the beginning of something far more dangerous? The fleet was about to embark on a journey that would change the galaxy forever, and with it, the last question remained: what had the humans left behind? The alien fleet moved cautiously toward the coordinates, the tension palpable in the air. The message from the last human ship, still faint but undeniable, had led them here, to a place where no alien ship had ventured before, to a region of space so deep and uncharted that it had been forgotten by even the most knowledgeable navigators. For centuries, this area had been ignored, deemed too dangerous or too remote for anyone to care about. But now, it was the focal point of an intergalactic race. The fleet's leaders had been divided. Some believed the coordinates were nothing more than a trap, a clever ruse left behind by the humans to lure the aliens into an ambush. Others thought it could be a hidden colony, a secret haven where the last remnants of humanity might be hiding. There were even whispers that it could be a weapon, something humanity had constructed in secret to fight back against the overwhelming forces that had destroyed their world. Whatever it was clear that the aliens could not ignore it. The signal, though weak, had grown more consistent the closer they got to the coordinates. It was as if the ship had left a breadcrumb trail for them to follow, leading them towards something hidden, something important. And the aliens, ever curious, could not resist the pull of this mystery. As the fleet entered the uncharted sector, the stars seemed different. There was something strange about the light here, something off about the way the darkness stretched across the void. The ships moved silently, their engines barely making the sound as they glided through the emptiness. The alien commanders were on edge, their eyes constantly flicking between their screens and the vast expanse outside. They were entering unknown territory, and none of them knew what they would find. Then it came. A blip on the scanners. Something appeared in the distance, barely visible at first. At first, they thought it was just another anomaly, a random fluctuation in the sensors. But as they got closer, it became clear. It was a structure, a massive construct floating in space. It was unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. It was vast, with enormous spires reaching toward the stars, covered in strange markings that seemed to shift and change as the ships approached. The structure looked ancient, far older than anything the aliens had encountered. The material it was made of didn't match anything in their databases. It was as if it had been created by a civilization far beyond their understanding. The fleet paused, hovering at a safe distance. No one dared to approach too closely yet. The alien commanders ordered their ships to scan the structure, trying to get more information. The data was strange, incomprehensible. The readings fluctuated wildly, making it impossible to determine what the structure was or what it contained. Every attempt to gather more information was met with resistance, as if the structure itself was blocking the scans. But then, the most unexpected thing happened. The faint signal from the last human ship intensified, coming from the heart of the structure. The aliens could no longer ignore it. It was calling to them, pulling them toward it. The fleet's commanders exchanged uneasy glances. They had come all this way, but now they were faced with a decision. Should they investigate further, or should they turn back and report to their superiors, who would likely want to destroy the structure and everything around it? There was no turning back now. The message was too important. The last human ship had left them this clue for a reason, and they couldn't afford to ignore it. One by one, the ships in the fleet moved closer to the structure. As they approached, the strange markings on its surface seemed to glow, pulsating with an eerie light. The energy readings spiked, and the air around the fleet seemed to hum with an invisible power. The alien commanders ordered their ships to keep their distance, but they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. It was as if the structure itself was aware of their presence, waiting for something. A voice broke through the silence, coming from one of the lower-ranking officers. "Commander, look. There's something moving inside the structure." The commanders turned to the screens, and their hearts skipped a beat. The structure was alive, or at least it seemed to be. Something inside was shifting, rearranging, as if responding to their presence. The officers scrambled to make sense of the new data, but it was clear that they were not alone in this place. Something ancient, something powerful, was hidden within the structure, and it was beginning to stir. The fleet's commanders quickly realized that they had underestimated what they were dealing with. This was not just a hidden human legacy. This was something far more dangerous. The humans had left behind something for a reason, but they hadn't left any instructions on how to control it. It was like a weapon, yes, but also a key to something much bigger. The structure seemed to pulse with energy, and the longer the fleet remained, the more uneasy they became. Then, just as they were preparing to pull back, the structure's surface split open with a deafening crack. The alien ships recoiled, their weapons ready, but nothing happened. Instead, a beam of light shot out from the heart of the structure, cutting through the darkness of space. The light was blinding, pure, and it felt alive. The aliens had no choice but to approach. The message, the structure, the light, it was all part of something much greater than they had ever anticipated. And as they moved closer, they couldn't help but wonder, what had the humans left behind? And what did it mean for the future of the galaxy? The aliens had followed the signal, but now they were beginning to realize that they had been led into something far more complex than they could have ever imagined. And whatever was hidden inside the structure was far from finished. The beam of light continued to pulse, illuminating the darkness of space around the alien fleet. It was unlike anything the commanders had ever seen before, too pure, too powerful, as though it were a force of nature itself. As the alien ships drew closer, their instruments went haywire, each ship struggling to maintain control. The strange energy field surrounding the structure seemed to be pushing back against their technology, as if it were alive, rejecting them. No amount of scans, no amount of data could make sense of what they were facing. The aliens, with all their advanced technology, were powerless against this force. The fleet's commanders ordered the ships to hold their position, each one hesitant to get any closer. There was no protocol for this. Nothing in their years of space exploration had prepared them for such a discovery. This wasn't a mere relic of the past. It was a living, breathing entity. The human ship had led them here, but now the aliens weren't sure if they were ready to uncover what was hidden within. The beam of light suddenly stopped. The structure, which had been humming with energy, grew still, like a dormant giant waking from a long slumber. A quiet silence fell over the fleet as the commanders exchanged uneasy glances. The atmosphere had shifted. The calm that had settled was unnerving. The tension in the air was thick, as if something was about to happen. But what? And then, just as quickly as it had stopped, the light began to pulse again. But now, it was different. The pulse was not just light. It felt like a call, a summons, something that resonated deep within the very core of the alien ships. The structure was alive, and now it was reaching out to them. Inside the control room of the lead ship, the tension was unbearable. The commanders, feeling the weight of this unprecedented discovery, ordered their crew to keep monitoring the structure. They tried to maintain their composure, but fear lingered at the edges of their minds. They had come here thinking they could control whatever the humans had left behind, but now they wondered if the humans had prepared something that was far beyond their understanding. Suddenly, a voice crackled over the communication system, breaking the silence. "Commander, we are detecting movement within the structure." The voice was shaky, filled with an undertone of disbelief. The lead commander's heart raced as he turned to his officers. What did this mean? Was the structure finally revealing what was hidden inside? The pulse of light grew brighter and more intense, and then the structure responded to the alien ships. Slowly, as if the entire construct were awakening from a long period of slumber, something began to emerge from its center. At first, it was barely noticeable, a slight ripple in the air. But then, it grew more pronounced, a shape forming in the center of the beam. What came into view shocked them all. It wasn't a weapon, as they had feared, nor a hidden colony. What emerged was something entirely different. It was a figure, a humanoid form, but not quite human. The being was tall, with skin that shimmered like liquid metal, its body seemingly made of a substance that glowed with an otherworldly light. It floated in midair, its eyes glowing a deep, unnatural blue, as if they held the knowledge of the entire galaxy within them. This was not a being of flesh and blood, but something far more ancient, far more powerful. The alien commanders watched in stunned silence as the being moved toward them. It didn't speak. It didn't need to. The moment its presence touched their ships, the energy in the air seemed to shift. The ships trembled as if caught in a gravitational pull, and the entire fleet was drawn toward the center of the structure. The being had control. More control than the aliens had ever known, more than they could ever comprehend. "Prepare to speak," one of the commanders ordered, trying to maintain some semblance of command. But there was no need for words. The being, whatever it was, communicated without sound. As it moved closer to the alien ships, the energy inside their craft seemed to quiet. The chaos that had overtaken their systems faded, replaced by an unnatural calm. Then the being raised one of its glowing hands and extended it toward the lead ship. The hand was filled with power, an aura that radiated across the space between them. The commanders felt the weight of the being's presence like a physical force pushing against their minds. It was like nothing they had ever experienced before, a force that was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. Inside the lead ship, the officers struggled to understand what they were seeing. The figure was not human, not alien. It transcended everything they knew. It was ancient, and yet it was clearly tied to the humans. This wasn't just a relic from their past. This was part of something bigger. The figure before them was a messenger, and the structure, the beacon, was part of humanity's final legacy. With a sudden flash, the being moved. It did not speak, but in that moment, the minds of the commanders were filled with a vision of the past, of humanity's destruction. They saw the burning remains of Earth, the wars that ravaged their planet, the final desperate fight for survival. And in the center of it all, they saw the humans' ultimate decision, the creation of this structure, this being, as the last hope for their species. The vision shifted again. The humans had not been destroyed. No, they had prepared for this moment. The being was not the last of humanity, but a gift, a weapon, a legacy, something that would live on. The vision revealed to the aliens that humanity had known its time was ending, but they had left behind this final key, a key that could unlock the power of the galaxy. The figure was a conduit to that power, a manifestation of their last great creation. As the vision faded, the fleet commanders were left in stunned silence. The realization hit them like a wave. The humans had not only survived their destruction, they had left behind something that could alter the fate of the galaxy. This being was not just a message, but a challenge. And now, it was up to the aliens to decide whether they would accept it or destroy it. The light from the figure dimmed as it moved back toward the structure. The fleet commanders watched in awe as the being disappeared into the heart of the ancient construct, leaving behind only the lingering feeling of power. The pulse of light faded, and the structure became still once more. But now, the aliens knew they could not ignore the humans' legacy. Whatever this being was, it was the last piece of humanity's plan, and it was now in their hands to decide how to proceed. And in the back of their minds, they wondered, what would happen if they chose wrong? The fleet remained in stunned silence for what seemed like an eternity after the being had disappeared back into the heart of the ancient structure. The alien commanders were still processing the flood of images, emotions, and concepts that had been thrust upon them by the mysterious entity. The power they had felt, the overwhelming sense of awe, had left them shaken. But there was also a feeling they couldn't shake off, a feeling of dread. The humans had left behind a legacy that was beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. The being was not merely a piece of history, but a living, breathing embodiment of that legacy. What did it mean? What was the true purpose of this gift or weapon or whatever it was? The lead commander was the first to speak, his voice tight with both awe and apprehension. We've been shown something that defies everything we thought we knew. This entity, this being, it's not just part of humanity's history. It's a message. But it's also a challenge, a test. The question is, what happens if we fail? The other commanders exchanged uneasy glances. They all knew the answer, even if none of them dared to speak it aloud. Failing wasn't an option. The weight of that realization bore down on them as they turned their focus back to the structure, now silent and still, as if waiting for them to make the next move. For the first time in their existence, the aliens were confronted with something they couldn't simply conquer or destroy. This was different. It wasn't about power or domination. It was about understanding. And that terrified them more than anything else. The humans had left behind something far more dangerous than a weapon. They had left behind a question that the aliens didn't know how to answer. What would happen if they unlocked the full potential of this entity? What could it do? What was it capable of? As the fleet commanders deliberated, the energy readings from the structure remained stable, but the sense of anticipation in the air was palpable. They could feel the structure beckoning to them. It was as if it were alive, aware of their presence, waiting for them to make their move. And yet, despite the unsettling nature of the situation, the pull to continue was irresistible. They had come this far, and turning back now seemed impossible. One of the fleet's engineers, a young officer who had remained quiet up until this point, suddenly spoke up. "Commander, I've been analyzing the energy fluctuations coming from the structure. It's not just light, it's something else. It's sending out a kind of pulse, a low-frequency signal, almost like a beacon. It's not static. It's sending a message, just like the last human ship did." The lead commander's eyes narrowed. "A message? From the structure itself?" "Yes, sir. I believe so. The patterns are complex, almost like they're shifting and changing as they reach us. It's as though the structure is trying to communicate directly with us. But we need to decipher it. It's not like anything we've encountered before." The commander stood still for a moment, processing the information. The structure had been dormant for millennia, yet now it was reaching out, almost as if it were alive. It wanted them to understand. The humans had known this moment would come, and they had prepared for it. But why? Why leave behind such a complex, powerful legacy? What did they want the aliens to do with it? "Increase the scans," the commander ordered. "We need to understand what we're dealing with. This isn't just a relic, it's a key. a key to something far bigger than us. The fleet's engineers and technicians scrambled to adjust the ship's scanners, trying to make sense of the complex energy signatures coming from the structure. The readings were unlike anything they had seen before. It was as if the structure was alive, responding to their presence, feeding them information in a way that no technology could fully explain. As the data poured in, it became clear that the structure wasn't just an ancient artifact. It was a bridge between worlds, between time, between the past and the future. And the being they had seen earlier, it wasn't just a guard or a weapon. It was a guide, a custodian of humanity's last secret. The lead commander felt the weight of the decision upon him. They were on the precipice of something enormous, something that could change the galaxy forever. If they chose to engage with the structure, they would open a door to unknown possibilities, some of which could be catastrophic. But if they chose to leave it behind, they might be missing out on the key to understanding humanity's true potential, or worse, the means to their own destruction. The tension in the room was suffocating as the decision weighed on the commanders. They had fought wars, conquered civilizations, and destroyed entire species. But this was different. This wasn't about power. It was about something far deeper. The humans had left behind a message, a challenge, and it was clear that the galaxy would never be the same again once the secret was uncovered. With a heavy heart, the commander gave the order. Prepare to make contact. We will decipher the message. We must understand what the humans left behind, no matter the cost. As the fleet closed in on the structure, the pulse of light intensified, growing brighter and more vibrant. It was as if the structure itself was responding to their decision, acknowledging their choice. The beings that had once inhabited this galaxy, the ones who had left this legacy behind, had known that the future would be uncertain, and they had prepared for this moment. But now, the commanders were faced with the most difficult question of all. Would they unlock humanity's secret and claim its power, or would they leave it behind, content to let the past remain buried? As they reached the edge of the structure, they knew one thing for certain. Whatever they chose would change everything. The future of the galaxy hung in the balance, and the only certainty was that nothing would ever be the same again. The pulse from the structure intensified once more, sending waves of energy across the void, rippling through the fabric of space. The alien fleet hovered at the edge of the vast, ancient construct, its surface now alive with motion. The commanders could feel the weight of their decision pressing down on them, the responsibility of unlocking a secret that could either save or destroy them. This was no longer just about the humans. They were long gone. This was about something much bigger, something that could shape the future of the entire galaxy. Inside the lead ship, the officers were working frantically, trying to understand the complex readings now flooding in. The young officer who had first noticed the beacon pulse was no longer silent. His voice came through the comm system, shaking with excitement and fear. "Commander, I think I've found something. The energy is resonating in a specific pattern. It's not just a message. It's like a key, a sequence of coordinates. They're leading us somewhere." The commander's heart skipped a beat. A key, coordinates. The humans had not only left a message, but a map, one that might lead to something even greater than the structure itself. "Show me," the commander said, his voice cold but steady, trying to conceal the sense of urgency that was beginning to take hold. The officer quickly adjusted the display, and the fleet's main screen filled with a complex array of symbols and geometric shapes. These weren't just random patterns. They were coordinates, a set of directions that seemed to lead deeper into the unknown reaches of the galaxy. "These coordinates," the officer said, pointing to the map, "they're leading us to a place that doesn't exist in any of our star charts. It's far beyond the outer rim, in a region of space that's never been explored. We thought it was empty space, a dead zone. But this is something else entirely." The realization hit the commander like a punch to the gut. The humans had known where to hide. They had known where to leave their legacy, And now the aliens were standing at the threshold of that hidden place. The commanders were torn. Part of them wanted to delve into the mystery, to follow the coordinates, to understand what the humans had left behind. Another part of them warned against it. What if the humans had hidden something far darker, something that could destroy the entire galaxy? The warnings of the past hung over them, the stories of the ancient civilizations that had disappeared because they sought knowledge they couldn't comprehend. But there was no turning back now. The path had been laid before them. The fleet could not simply ignore the coordinates, no matter the dangers that might lie ahead. They had already come too far. Set course for the coordinates, the commander ordered, his voice resolute. We must know what the humans have hidden. We must understand. As the fleet adjusted their course and began their journey toward the unknown, the atmosphere inside the ship shifted. The tension, which had been so palpable before, was now laced with a sense of anticipation. The crew members worked quickly, their eyes darting to their consoles as they prepared for whatever lay ahead. But beneath that professional exterior, fear and curiosity intermingled. None of them knew what awaited them. The space around them grew darker as they left the last known systems behind. The stars that had once guided their path slowly faded into the distance. In their place, a profound silence settled in. This was no longer the familiar galaxy they knew. They had crossed a threshold into the unknown, a place where no species had ever dared to venture. As they approached the coordinates, the structure behind them grew smaller, its pulse fading into the background. The alien ships, each one carefully following the calculated path, were now fully focused on the task ahead. The void of space stretched out before them, and the sense of isolation was almost suffocating. They were alone in this corner of the galaxy, with nothing but the coordinates to guide them. After what felt like an eternity, they arrived. The fleet emerged from the darkness of space into an entirely new region, one that defied description. The area was bathed in a strange, unearthly glow. The stars themselves seemed different here, their light distorted, as if the very fabric of space had been altered. In the center of this glowing region, a massive object loomed. It was unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. The shape was indescribable, not a ship or a structure, but something organic, as though it had grown from the fabric of the universe itself. The surface was covered in intricate, shifting patterns that seemed to change every time they looked away. It was alive. Is this what they were hiding? One of the commanders whispered, the awe evident in his voice. The lead commander, still determined but now filled with doubt, nodded. It must be. The humans didn't just leave behind a structure or a weapon. This is their final gift. And it's a gift that's meant for us to understand, to unlock. But it's also a warning. Whatever this is, we cannot approach it lightly. The fleet halted at a safe distance, hovering in the strange glow. The structure before them pulsed with energy, and for a moment, everything felt eerily still. Then the silence was broken by a faint hum, coming from the depths of the massive structure. It wasn't like any noise the aliens had ever heard before. It was almost musical, like a sound that resonated deep within the soul, stirring something ancient and primal. The fleet commanders exchanged uneasy glances. The sound was growing louder, and the air around them seemed to vibrate with its intensity. The energy coming from the object surged, and the fleet's shields flickered under the pressure. There was something alive in there, something they couldn't see, but they could feel it. Then, as if responding to their presence, the structure began to open. The surface split apart, revealing an intricate web of corridors and chambers hidden within. It was not a machine. It was a living entity, a vast organic network of interconnected passages, each one pulsing with the same eerie glow. The commanders could only stare in disbelief. This was it, the heart of the mystery, the final secret of humanity. Prepare to enter, the commander ordered, his voice barely a whisper. He knew that once they crossed that threshold, everything would change. The fate of the galaxy might rest on the next step they took. With that, the fleet moved forward, crossing the threshold of the ancient structure and the unknown future that awaited them. The interior of the massive, organic structure was unlike anything the alien fleet had ever encountered. As the ships entered, the entire space around them seemed to pulse, its walls alive with an otherworldly rhythm. The corridors stretched ahead like veins in a vast, living organism, and as the fleet moved deeper, the air grew thick with energy, charged with a sense of ancient power. Each chamber they passed seemed to resonate with echoes of a distant past, a time when humanity's greatest minds had crafted something far beyond their own understanding. The commanders, now fully aware of the enormity of the situation, had their ships move cautiously through the sprawling, labyrinthine passages. The walls shifted subtly, as though responding to their presence, drawing them forward deeper into the heart of the structure. Every turn they made felt deliberate, as if the structure itself was guiding them toward something waiting in the heart of the unknown. They could hear the hum growing louder as they moved, a steady rhythm that felt like a heartbeat, steady and unyielding. It was both soothing and unsettling. It was as though the structure was aware of their presence, watching them, waiting for them to unlock the final secret hidden deep within. The officers aboard the lead ship were working feverishly, scanning every inch of the massive structure for signs of danger. The energy readings were off the charts, unlike anything they had ever encountered. The technology that powered this place was ancient, but its power was still unmatched. There were no signs of decay, no sign that the structure had ever been abandoned. It was alive in ways they couldn't yet understand. "We're approaching the core," the officer in charge of navigation reported, his voice trembling slightly. "The readings indicate something immense. It's like a vast energy source, but it's not just power. It's something more, something that reaches far beyond our comprehension." The commander felt a cold shiver run down his spine. "Is it a weapon?" The officer hesitated. "It's hard to say, sir. It could be, but it's not just that. It's a conduit, a link, perhaps, to something far greater." The fleet pressed on, the core growing closer with every passing second. As they entered the final chamber, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. The room was vast, its ceiling lost in the shadows above, and the walls curved and stretched, as though the space itself was alive. In the center of the room stood a massive structure, towering and radiant, surrounded by shifting patterns of energy. The being, the entity they had first seen outside, was there, but now it stood still, almost dormant, at the center of the room. Its form was no longer as fluid and translucent as it had been before. Now it was solid, its glowing eyes staring into the distance, as if it had been waiting for them all along. The pulse of energy that emanated from it was not violent, but powerful. It resonated in every corner of the chamber, filling the air with an oppressive force. The alien commanders watched in awe and fear. This was the final key. Whatever lay ahead, they would have to face it together. The fate of the galaxy, perhaps even the fate of the universe, hung in the balance. The lead commander, his heart pounding, stepped forward, his voice breaking the silence. "What is this? What is the purpose of all this? Why did you leave this behind?" For a moment, there was no response. The figure stood motionless, its eyes never leaving the distance, as though it were listening to something beyond the reach of their comprehension. Then, slowly, the figure moved. Its hand reached out, and the energy around them began to shift. The patterns on the walls began to glow, and the entire room seemed to come alive. The hum that filled the air grew louder, more intense. The ground beneath their feet trembled, and for the first time since entering the structure, the alien fleet felt truly vulnerable. The being was not just a guardian. It was something more. It was a messenger, yes, but it was also the key to the next step, something they weren't yet ready to understand. Suddenly, the being spoke, not in words, but in thought. The commanders' minds were filled with visions, flashes of images they couldn't comprehend, of distant worlds, of a time long gone. The human race had reached the pinnacle of its existence before its destruction. They had built this structure not just as a legacy, but as a beacon for what was to come, a warning, but also an invitation. An invitation to those who would dare understand the true nature of the universe. The being's voice, though not audible, filled their minds with a single thought. The key lies in understanding. The power of creation, the power of destruction, it all lies within. But you must choose. Will you use it to heal or to break? The fate of all life lies within your hands. The commanders were frozen in place, their minds reeling from the revelation. The visions continued to flood their thoughts, revealing the ultimate truth of what had happened to the human race. They hadn't perished from their own weakness, but from the dangers of their knowledge. The humans had known the truth of the universe's creation, and in their pursuit of it, they had unlocked the very fabric of existence. The power to reshape worlds, to manipulate reality itself, was within their grasp. But with it came the inevitable cost. The price of creation was destruction. The being moved again, its hand rising to point directly at the lid ship. The energy in the room surged, a brilliant light filling the space. The commander's ships began to shake, their systems faltering under the pressure. The being was offering them a choice to embrace the knowledge, to wield the power, or to turn away from it, to understand the ultimate truth of existence, or to leave it buried, lost forever. The commander stood motionless, his mind flooded with the weight of the decision before him. The fate of his people, the future of the galaxy, rested on the choice he would make. Would they take the knowledge and risk everything? Or would they turn their backs on it and leave the power of creation and destruction locked away, hidden from the universe forever? The figure stood silent, waiting, its glowing eyes watching them. The moment of truth had arrived. Whatever decision they made here would reverberate across the galaxy, shaping the future of all life in ways they couldn't even begin to imagine. The question hung in the air, the final choice, and the weight of the universe rested in their hands. Would they choose to create or destroy? Would they unlock the secrets of the universe, or leave them buried in the darkness of time? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same again.